find the tool that resonates with you, and then just, let that be your focus. Let that be your commitment. And then when it's like, who am I to live this life when everybody else isn't? We have to remember everybody has that choice. Everybody has that choice in that second to choose a different way.
Thanks to Sana Skin Studio for supporting the No podcast. Sana is a skin studio that is shifting the relationship with your skin and your products through goal-driven facials, real guidance, and clean skincare. Stay tuned for our promo code so you can receive $25 off of your first facial at Sana Skin Studio. Welcome to the No Podcast with me, Nikki Spo.
You're here and you're supposed to be here. If you're new to listening in, welcome. And if you're a subscriber and tune in all the time, welcome back. You are listening to The No, not in the know, The No, where it is not about knowing everything, but about coming to know ourselves. That deep sense of inner knowing, which we all crave, and that I believe by having and listening to empowering conversations that we are all inching closer to finding within ourselves, that way of being or simply knowing. I'm your hostess, Nikki Spo, and if you aren't already subscribed to the show, now is the time to click subscribe on whichever platform you're listening in on so that you never miss an episode and we get those downloads, which helps to put our thoughtful and thought-provoking conversations in front of a wider audience. Today, we've got a magical human joining us, Jocelyn Sandstrom, who specializes in quantum energy, neuro-linguistic programming, and neurological reprogramming. Wow, have I needed this in my life. And I gotta say, I have a little bit of experience with these practices in healing from some really heavy and tough life experiences of my own. So I'm really excited that you all get to hear from Jocelyn today. If you're looking for deeper connection, which I believe so many of us are, there is a space for you where you can be yourself, come home to yourself, and have a beautiful crew of women supporting you on your journey. We all are becoming her. We are all finding the it energy within ourselves because she, that woman you want to be, the highest version of yourself and your integrity, she is us. And together we are becoming her. We are becoming the her of our highest desires. In our exclusive online women's community, we are talking about all of life's chapters in a safe and supportive space. We are coming together for webinars from experts in the wellness industry, and we have endless resources available to help you on your biggest, greatest, most glorious homecoming of your life. And I have a special gift for my audience, specifically for my podcast listeners, a lifetime discounted rate to access our group, Becoming Her. I will link the details in the show notes, and I will hope to see you there. If you have any questions, you can always send me a DM on Instagram at Nikki Spo. I'm pretty good at getting back to every single message that I receive. I look forward to having you on this journey with us. So with all of the work that I have tried to do on myself over the years, including work on shifting my own neurological pathways, I am so excited to interview Jocelyn. Jocelyn Sandstrom is the founder of Wellness and Metaphysical, which is a community-driven platform that promotes a higher level of consciousness through expos and retreats. Since 2010, she has been providing quantum energy sessions and teaching neuro-linguistic programming, neurological repatterning, and Millennium Method to her clients globally. Jocelyn specializes in coaching and mentoring others to release deep-rooted issues from their past that are holding them back, building not just next-level success, but also deep fulfillment. I'm so grateful to have the opportunity to pick her brain today and come to you guys with some tangible takeaways. This is a gem right here, so let's get going with Jocelyn Sandstrom. Yeah, so one of the things that also that you were saying, and it stuck out to me, it's like making a decision that's what you want. I think a lot of people are stuck in indecision, right? And I think that comes with not knowing yourself. Like when you're like, okay, all you have to do is like kind of like decide. But this is what it's going to be, right? This is what it's going to be. And then I was having this conversation even with somebody at like a party the other day. It's like when you look, if you say, I'm going to look for yellow butterflies today, you will see yellow butterflies everywhere because that's what you're looking for. You're like, you're hoping to see it. And on a much smaller scale, my 6-year-old has said, I have had the worst week. How do I turn this around? I've had the worst week. I'm like, dude, you got to start looking for the good in your day, man. I'm like, my man, little guy, you got to start looking for the good in your day. When you start to look for everything bad that's happening in your day, and oh my gosh, my shoe was untied in his 6-year-old world, and I fell, and then I scraped my knee, and then I dropped my pencil case, and my stuff splattered everywhere, and then I was late to lunch. You're looking for like those things are real, right? We cannot spiritually bypass or do toxic positivity bypassing, none of that shit, right? Those things are real, but we also get to a point where you make a decision like, this is how I want to live my life. Like, I want to see the good in things. I want to choose the good in things, but also have boundaries where you're like, okay, these bad things are a part of life, right? That I am going to have to deal with. And then some of these other bad things don't have to be a part of my life. But I think that like people are very, very stuck. Indecision, which I believe, and I want you to talk about this a little bit. I want to hear your opinion on it. I believe that indecision is like a core belief system of not knowing yourself. Because I think that when you know yourself, you already know the answers to things. It's just whether you have the courage to say it. If you're scared to say it to someone because it might hurt someone's feelings. If you're not able to stand in your power for the sake of, or the risk of upsetting your surroundings.
Yes, absolutely. Like there's so many, and this one is so deep and there's so much to this. So yes, there's that layer that you don't know yourself. So you're going back and forth between what you know and what feels right to you and everybody's opinions. And so you're bouncing back and forth like, oh, this is how I feel, but they said I should do this. This is how I feel, but actually this is what works or worked in the past and all these things. But if we do that, we're going to keep chained to our past and we're not going to evolve. The next thing to me is like, there's something that they're receiving from this behavior. So it makes them feel a certain way. And so that's why they keep, like pessimists, they love to focus on the bad because the pain of hoping for something and then not getting it, and that the pain of that disappointment is so big that they'd rather not hope for it to protect themselves from it. So that's where inner power comes in. If you have inner power to know that you can handle disappointment, to know that you are unstoppable no matter what, to know that the pain of disappointment is temporary, but the suffering, the story that you make about the disappointment is the thing that lingers, and you recognize you're no longer going to create the suffering, then you can take those leaps again and you can, I say hope, but for me, I shifted over the hope. It's the knowing that it's going to work out, knowing that if it doesn't, you can transcend it. You can transmute it. You can turn it into something as long as you don't give up, as long as you don't get stuck in the disappointment. You can harvest the learnings, you can pivot, and then you can turn it into your superpower or turn it into something better than you could have ever imagined. So that's where the inner power comes in. There's the other pieces of like, just the pattern of it. Like clients will say all the time, like, oh, for instance, you could just say like, oh, I always attract these certain types of people. And you're like, always? And they're like, no, not always, but this happened, this happened, this happened, this happened. And I'm like, okay, well, awesome. You validated that. Do you want to keep validating that? Or do you want to validate the other thing, the times that they do drop into your life? And so we're so focused on keeping this story there because then we know who we are. So we feel safe there, right?
Yeah.
And so creating a new story when you could be creating it and it could not work out, and then you could have disappointment or the unknown, like all of these things, there's so many different layers to that. Even like when I first moved home to take care of my mom, I had this whole martyr thing, and like and a lot of it comes from worth. It's like, okay, I left my career, I moved home to Hawaii. And so I'm this amazing daughter because I gave up everything and I'm doing this. And like, I had to tell everybody all those things because inside at that time, I did not feel worthy because I left everything. I didn't have I left my whole career. I had to start from scratch. So my only thing that I could cling on to was what I was doing for a person. And I couldn't stop. Like, I was like, I went through all of these things and all of that because to me, that proved my worth because I did not feel worthy in that time. So once I did the work on myself and realized I don't need to identify as that, number one, I don't need to prove to anybody that I'm worthy because I am worthy, period, just by being born. Because not everybody gets to be born. I had 5 miscarriages. And so I tell my son all the time, like how strong he is that he made it through, that he made it here, that he's worthy and deserving just by being here. Number 2, I don't have to prove it to anybody that I'm that I'm worthy and deserving
Yeah.
anymore. And that goes even deeper to when I used to. So I did a reprogramming process on myself to be the lucky one, because I was, it was just such a struggle. And I'm like, I'm just tired of struggling. And I discovered in the reprogramming process that part of the reason why I was struggling goes back to worth again. Because if it was easy for me, how would I prove my worth? How
Mm.
would I prove that I
Mm.
earned it? And I was like, oh my gosh, I spent my whole life trying to prove to people that I'm worthy and that I earned it instead of just living a lucky, easy life. And I'm like, I'm done with that. Like, I get to be the lucky one. If people say, oh, she's just lucky, I don't care, because I get to live it, because I know I'm worthy and deserving.
Amen.
And so I don't care what you think about it anymore. And if you want to know about it, come and I'll share the secret with you. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? But so much is, and then after that, my life changed the day I did that reprogramming process, because I normally don't win things, right? I got home and my friend messaged me and she's like, oh, you just won a brand immersion worth over $10,000 with your mentor. And I was like, but she did that poll last week and I didn't win. She's like, yeah, but she did another one out of the blue. And I was like, what? And that was the journey of becoming the lucky one. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to embrace this. But then I noticed, I was like, oh, but I feel bad if I win and they didn't win. How's that? There's so many layers to this for us. And so we just get to discover what that is so we can shed it and just be us. When we're just us, when we love ourselves, when we are in our inner power, we don't have to compete. We don't have to make other people look bad. We don't have to judge. We don't have to do any of those things, because we're not fighting with them for the external power. We have
Yeah.
inner power, and we have so much more inner power that we get to flow to everyone, instead of I need your power in and that whole struggle thing.
It's so true. I have been thinking a lot lately about like the attachment to our story, right? So for a long time, I'm like, I've survived trauma, right? I survived sexual abuse. I went I'm an alcoholic and I got sober and I'm a sober person. I'm a sober person. Like, I've been so attached to like, I'm a sober person. Like, how about I'm just a person? Like,
Yes.
like I went through like 2022 was the year of walking through the fire for me. Like I went through a lot of stuff in 2022, and I'm like, oh, wow, I'm attached to that story. Right.
Yes.
Like for a while, Jocelyn, I'm like, who am I to get to like, I walked through all those things. So that means the rest of my life has to be terrible. What I realize now is like, my life is better than it ever has been. And sometimes, and I think a lot of us do this, and that's why I'm sharing it, is that I think that we go, well, who am I to live this life?
Yes.
This
100
beautiful,
million%.
abundant, lucky, happy, full life. But really, it's like, who am I not to live this
Mhm.
life? Right? Like
Yes.
it was a privilege to be born, and I want to honor you and take a moment to honor the fact that you went through 5 miscarriages, because that's hard. That's really, really hard. And I know so many people have gone through that and are struggling to conceive. And, I'm happy you got your rainbow baby and that he came to this world, because that's really
Yeah.
powerful. But I
Well,
think that like you're onto something about the attachment to our stories, and we can attach to the negative parts of our stories, and we can also choose to attach to like the good things, right?
yes. And so that's that. It's such a small tweak.
Yeah.
Like before, the old me would tell the stories of my miscarriages to prove my strength.
I'm tough. I'm
Now,
strong. Look at what I've been through. Look how
yes,
strong I am.
yes. But now I tell them to share with people that are going through it. It's a
Completely different.
subtle shift. And each miscarriage really truly did become my superpower. The first
Wow.
one, I was devastated. The next one, I got stronger. I looked at my life. I made the changes. The next one, each one, the last one set me free into this peace and this knowing that's so deep that no one could ever take from me. So I would never go back. And like I had this thing where I was talking to my husband one day and I'm like, like I wouldn't go back and change that. And he's like,
Yeah.
oh, and I'm like, no, because who I am right now and what I can do in the world because of that and how I can support other women that are
Right.
going through that.
Amen.
Yeah. Is like, it's priceless. It's just,
It makes me emotional to even think about, Jocelyn. Like I think about
yeah,
that, like what you're saying, and I'm just like, God bless you. And like God source universe, like I think the same thing. Like sometimes when I'm like, why me? I'm like, because because I get to trailblaze and I get to help now. Like my gift
Yes.
now is to be able to help other people.
All right, guys, let's take a quick break so I can thank our sponsor, Sana Skin Studio, with their OG location in Wynwood and their additional locations in Fort Lauderdale and Coconut Grove. Okay, so the best way I can describe Sana is that it feels like coming home. Unlike traditional facials, Sana's facials are rooted in education, and I love this so much. Every experience I have had at Sana has been a chance for me to learn more about my skin and its needs. I love that the facials are effective while also being accessible enough to be a monthly ritual rather than a yearly splurge. This is why the Sana membership is so great. I'm honored to be able to provide our audience with a promo code. Use the code THENOGLOW for $25 off of your first facial when booking at sanaskinstudio.com and additional incentives if you book a membership. I have absolutely loved my skin healing journey with Sana Skin Studio.
Yeah. And and the other gift that it gives us, all our pain, all our struggle, if you really truly transmute it, you then know you're unstoppable. When you have a fear about
Right.
something in the future and you start to panic, you're like, okay, actually, I don't need to have this fear because I know it's going to hurt. I know it's going to hurt.
Yeah.
But I also know that I'm going to transmute it. I'm going to turn it into my superpower.
Yeah.
So I got this. So I don't
Yeah.
have to worry. I got through all of these things. So I know I'm going to get through that. It's
Yeah.
not going to be comfortable, but I know on the other side, it's going to be amazing. And so now when I have a fear, I can transcend that fear just by that thought, because a lot of time the fear is just the fear of that pain and the fear of not surviving it. Like when my grandpa first passed, I literally looked over to my sister and I'm like, I can't believe I'm still here. Because I thought when he passed, I would just somehow disintegrate. You know what I mean? And I was shocked that I was still here
Yeah.
and that I survived. Like that was the first thing that happened. So once we know that, like we really truly do become unstoppable if we compound those things instead of compounding our weaknesses. And so it's our choice. Like I would say we create or we manifest every single second of every single day based on what we're looking for. Like you said, the butterflies, I use the red car theory, like whatever we're looking for. And so we're either creating or manifesting a bunch of lack and insecurities and doubts, or we are manifesting and creating magic, miracles, exponential wealth. Like I shifted my thing. And so I use that with my 4-year-old. He's now 5. But like he also is now like, oh, everywhere we go, we create our own magic and miracles. Nothing is outside of us. And I use this example where I forgot his toys at the beach one day. And he was, going to have a meltdown. I'm like, it's okay, Bodhi, we're magic and miracles. We got this. And so we get down to the beach and we start digging in the sand. And we almost immediately dig up this Lego wizard, which proved the magic right there. And I'm like, you see, we got a wizard. And he's like using it as his wand. He's like, magic and miracles. So he believes in that. Yeah, he believes in that reality. And so you could turn that word to anything you want. It doesn't have to be magic and miracles. I use magic and miracles because it lights me up. Mm-hmm. I use exponential wealth because it lights me up. Because before I used to have the story that I can make a lot of money, but I can't hold on to the money. So I kept validating all the times that I couldn't hold on to it. So of course, what's going to happen until I'm like, no, I'm exponential wealth. I build generational wealth. It's, and you shift that and you look for the times that you do and the times that you don't, that's not yours anymore. Like you choose to shift out those stories. Yes, this is a slower way. And yes, it is hard, but if you're willing to do it, do it. If you want a faster, easier way, reprogram it, right? Like, and you just get to reprogram all these things. But there's a million tools out there. Find the tool that resonates with you and then just, let that be your focus. Let that be your commitment. And then when it's like, who am I to live this life when everybody else isn't? We have to remember everybody has that choice. Everybody has that choice in that second to choose a different way. And so just because they're not choosing it doesn't mean that we can't choose it. And then the thing that came from that when I started to do that, and I never knew about this, was then you turn it into inspiration. And then the people around you start shifting because they're like, wow, like if she can do it, I can do it.
Yeah.
You break the 4-minute mile, and then they start coming to it from their power. Instead of before, I was fixing everything and I was like the fixer for everybody. And so I was, always drained because I was always fixing everybody's stuff all the time and not living my life. And after the 5th miscarriage was the one where I was like, no, I'm done with this. I'm going to live my life. I'm going to discover what I want to live. I'm going to do the things that I desire, even if people get pissed off at it because it's not who I used to be. But I know that I'm doing this for all of us because I'm not serving anyone if I'm not myself and if I'm always drained. And so I'm doing this for all of us because then when I show up to see you, I'm going to show up with more love instead of obligation and resentment. I'm going to show up because I want to be there.
Yeah.
And so it was a hard year, but then after that, things shifted. And then, people around me shifted. And I was like, wow, inspiration is a self-charging battery and they come to it in their power.
Wow.
And then they inspire other people so we don't have to be burnt out anymore. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's the key. So, and actions speak louder than words. I can tell people all day, every day. But it wasn't until I did it and my husband saw it happen that he said, I want to do this, right? It wasn't until I started creating this life that my dad was like, I don't know what you do, but can you do some stuff for this? And so when we realized we should just stop talking, we should just start being, not doing, because I don't agree with doing, but with being, we just get to start being.
I love that.
It shifts everything. And then we all get to live our best life.
So I want to talk a little bit about, and I'd like to close with this topic, is the power of celebrating the life that you already have manifested while continuing to manifest the next level of your life. So like in my group, Becoming Her, we talk about that a lot, right? Because we're trying, like, it's called Becoming Her because we're like, oh my gosh, her. When you think about her, you're like, oh, her, right? The version of yourself that's like over there, like at the tippity top and living her best self in her knowing, in her power, in her integrity, all of these things. And I'm kind of like, well, I'm doing that, right? Like I'm already doing that, but I still want to level up, right?
Yes.
It doesn't mean that I'm ungrateful for everything that I have now and that I am like that I'm selfish for wanting more, right? So there is a sort of tricky balance between that, I think, when working with other people. And I'm noticing that in my group, it's like, let's practice gratitude, right? Okay, so we're so grateful for what we have. So we're so grateful for what we have. We're so grateful for what we have. But we also want a little bit of more of this in our lives, right? So what is your take on that, on celebrating the life that you have already manifested for yourself while also continuing to manifest the next level of your life?
That really truly is the secret, because otherwise you're always chasing the carrot. So now I live this life like the younger version of me that dreamed it. I used to drive by this house with because my son did not like to nap. So I had to drive him around for naps. And so I'd drive him back and forth and I'd see myself in this house. I'd see him playing in the yard. I'd see all the things I desired to do in this house. And then when I first moved into the house, it was amazing. But then I got used to it. And then I wanted a bigger house and I looked for all the things that were wrong with it and all these things until I realized there's a younger version of me that dreamed about this house. So when I'm in this house and I'm sitting at the table with my husband or watching my son play in the yard, I think about that girl driving in front of the house, wishing that she was here, like desiring to be in this house. And I feel it for her. Like I fall in love. And I'm just like, sometimes we'll sit around the house and be like, oh my gosh, like this house is just so amazing. Like, remember when we dreamed about being here and all these things, and feel the feels, not just like I'm grateful for it, like feel the feels. Like anything that if I was to take it away from you and you would miss it, feel the feels of the gratitude, anything you longed for. When my son's having a meltdown and I'm just so fed up with it, I'm like, but I dreamed of this moment of you being in this life, in this world with me. And so like, I'm not going to get frustrated with this because I would rather you be here throwing a tantrum than not. And so like, oh my gosh, how lucky am I to even be here with you in this tantrum? And then I just stop and I reframe myself. And then I'm just like, wow, I'm so lucky. And it shifts the whole, his tantrum disappears. I end up playing with him and we have an amazing day. It's when we catch ourselves and we remember how grateful we are. There's that piece of us that doesn't want to, because we're like, oh, if we're so content, then the next thing's not going to come in. But the secret is when you are in this frequency of just like living everything you dreamt about, like actually living it, you open up the synchronicity, you open up the frequency to then have more drop in, because that whatever drops it into our life knows you're going to appreciate it, knows you're going to live it, knows you're going to do all these things with it, and you're going to value it, and you're going to like be with it, right? And so for me, once I started doing that, more things started dropping into my life, because now I'm appreciating it. Not just that, if you do this instantly overnight, you're going to fall in love with your life. We have our phones and we're like, oh, I want this new phone. You get it, you love it, and then you get bored of it until you lose it. And then you're like, oh crap. And then you get it back and you're like, oh my gosh, I love it so much. And then you get used to it again, right? It's like not allowing yourself to get used to this incredible life that we get to live. We take everything for granted until you get a phone call from someone that they lost something, or, someone passed. And then you're like, oh, I'm going to call all my family and be so grateful for you. But then a week from now, you're just irritated of them, or, all these things. And so it's like, how do you not take things for granted? How do you just live in this pure, deep gratitude and love that you get to live this life? Like, I'm always like, I was telling the mastermind the other day, I'm like, I could almost cry at any moment out of pure gratitude and love that like all these dreams have become a reality, and they're dropping in more and more. And because of that, more is dropping in.
Yeah.
I
think that's what it is. That's the secret sauce. Is like
otherwise, you're never going to be fulfilled. You're going to chase fulfillment for the rest of your life, and it's never going to drop in.
I think that's the secret sauce. Is like when you walk in gratitude and you choose to see the abundance in your life, more abundance shows up for you.
Yes.
Like it's like without fault, without fail.
Yes.
That is the formula.
And worst case scenario, you feel good. Best case scenario, you open up synchronicity and these things come into your life that blow your mind. And you're like, holy crap.
Oh, Jocelyn, it's been such a magical time speaking with you. I've loved having this conversation. I know we're going to help so many people with it. And just let our listeners know where they can find you in case they want to take a course with you or they just want to connect with you.
Yes. So I have my Instagram, Jocelyn Sandstrom. I put everything through my Instagram. I also have my website, jocelynsandstrom.com. And I also have a soul evolution process. You can call it soul evolution process. You can call it discovery process, whatever it is. That's free. So if you want that, just email me and I'll send it to you at info@jocelynsandstrom.com. And if you do this every day, it's going to help you to discover your truth and what's the aligned action that's going to bring most value to your vision, not just action, not just doing, but the thing that's going to bring the most value. Sometimes it's going to be the thing that's the hardest. But if you're brave enough and courageous enough and you do the inner work, you're going to take that leap and it's going to quantum leap you into another reality, because you're doing the things that actually make the biggest difference versus just busy work. That's just keeping us busy on the merry-go-round. So it's going to help you to override the conditioned mind. The more you do it in the beginning, it might be hard because your conditioned mind is going to be so loud, because your soul knowing, just like you're like, I don't want blended marriages, or your inner knowing, whatever you want to call it. But your conditioned mind is like, but that's not how it's supposed to be, right? And so building that relationship with your knowing to override the conditioned mind does take time. But if you do it every single day, sometimes also knowing that it's going to guide you to do things that aren't always going to work out, because you were meant to go through that, to grow through that, to become the person that you get to become in order to the person to receive your goals. So if you trust that there is no wrong, you can't screw it up. It's all the learning process of where you're going. It gives you so much freedom, and then you can actually get there. Like Disney got rejected 33 times before the 34th time he got accepted for the loan to create the thing that's one of my favorite things in the world. If you know that on the 34th time you're going to be accepted, how would you show up for all the other 33 times? How fast would you do the things instead of being afraid of being rejected again? And so this process is going to help you to really it's a simple process. It's just the tip of the iceberg, but it's something that I like to give people so they can start doing this now and start, shifting their life in an instant.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jocelyn. Everybody,
Yeah, thank
Jocelyn
you so
Sandstrom,
much.
she's a gem. She is a gem. Send this to your friends. They'll need to hear it too.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
This podcast was brought to you by Sana Skin Studio. Be sure to use my code, TheNoGlow, for $25 off of your first facial at Sana when booking via sanaskinstudio.com. More than a skin studio, Sana is a movement towards healthier skin and self-love. Thank you so much for listening to The Know. If you loved this episode, go ahead and share it with a friend. Words are so powerful, and someone may need to hear what we covered today. And if you really loved this episode, please take a moment to rate the show and leave a review. Your comments are so important and valued, and they give other listeners insight on what to expect on The Know. You can connect with me personally via Instagram at Nikki Spo and The Know with Nikki Spo. My hope for you today is that you are fearless in looking inward so that you can be your highest, most authentic self and go after the life of your dreams.